Well, this is the nature of it. What's up, everybody? Guy here. Been a while since we've done a little live, and I know it's not breaking news. This was yesterday. Brandon Aiyuk's comments in text on YouTube, but I wanted to spin it forward a little bit and just think about where the relationship is in the future. And I guess there's multiple questions. When will he be back? When will he be healthy? How much will he contribute? Will he look like a good player when he returns? Will he look like a great player when he returns? The tough part about the situation that they're in with him right now is that the thing that would speed up the relationship the fastest is him getting on the field, and he just can't be on the field. So there was some debate yesterday about who is Brandon Aiyuk talking about when he posts. By the way, welcome to YouTube. Not welcome. I mean, I think he's been on YouTube, but the comments on YouTube, good little spot to slide something in. I don't know if this is on Threads as well, but he said they were talking about trading me when I was off Percocets and muscle relaxers, peeing in a cup by my bed. Couldn't walk for 10 weeks. Ain't nobody trading for me. And the first fundamental question before we get to the big picture is just, is he talking about the Niners or is he just talking about the world? What's interesting about it is the NFL trade deadline last year was November 5th, and he got the surgery Veterans Day week, which is the middle of November. I went back and Googled, and the first thing I found was Lombardi tweeted on November 15th that he had surgery earlier in the week. So just keep that. It's something for the back of your mind. Maybe was there some procedure beforehand, before the surgery? Were there multiple little touch-ups? But the trade deadline came before the surgery on the timeline I can find. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong there. Meaning there was not like, if there was a trade, if there really was a discussion to try and trade an injured player, it would have happened before he was peeing in a cup and couldn't walk. But whatever. It doesn't mean that just that little piece of business. It doesn't mean there wasn't an ongoing conversation. Like, they're talking about trading me could mean like, all right, guys, when he gets healthy, the agent says to him, Brandon, when you get healthy, they're going to want to trade you. Or maybe he's just reading what everybody's writing on the internet, what everybody's saying on the internet, more likely. So there's that. Then there's, I think, the bigger question you're trying to answer instead of going line by line through the nitty gritty of this, which is it inevitable that this relationship just will end at some point? And if it does, will the Niners get productive football before it does? Or will they be trading a guy, 50 cents on the dollar? And I think that a lot of people view this right now as a situation that just has to end. And I'm trying not to just be contrarian about it, but I do just think there's a big difference between what happens on quote unquote paper, right? This is like on paper, and what happens in the real world. And for all of the, the post Super Bowl video coming off the Super Bowl in 2024, like the farewell, the comments, the video where he's on FaceTime with Jaden Daniels, the thing that mattered the most in the real world was what happened in that building. And when he showed up last year in front of the cameras while he was holding out and went up and, dapped up Kyle Shanahan and put his coach in a really awkward situation. Kyle Shanahan didn't want that. He hates that kind of stuff. And so, whatever was said in the building behind the scenes, whatever's been said between the two of them and the agent and the organization, like that stuff matters far more than anything that's out there on paper. But you can't deny that it just feels like better than 50-50, that they just want to move on. And so, I think the biggest thing as I look at it is like, will he play in a way that can change their mind? I know John Lynch has said, families have spats. And I think John Lynch is probably, of everybody, the most sensitive to, right? And it's a great thing to have, but the most sensitive to what a player's feelings are, what it's like to be a player, what it's like to be talked about, what it's like to be hurt, what it's like to be replaced, what it's like to get kind of shit on. what it's like for a fan base to maybe turn on you a little, all that kind of stuff. So I think he's sincere. And I think organizationally, they've all fallen in line of like, hey, it is best for us if we have a good relationship with Brandon. It's pretty unique. I mean, there are plenty of situations where receivers, especially receivers, where players get upset with a team, teams get upset with a player. Then Debo got paid, and it all kind of took care of itself. That hasn't been the case here. And the reason it hasn't been the case is because they didn't get to wash it all off because he wasn't playing well, or at least wasn't producing at the level that you hoped he would with that contract. And then he got hurt. And then all this stuff continues. So they're not in a great spot. And I do think it can be fixed with a guy getting on the field. Here's something I would say about Aiyuk is like he was not publicly this way when he was younger, which is natural, right? Young is young too, by the way. Like young is like 23, 22, 24 years old. Like you think about yourself, maybe you are that age right now. And we're not talking about you because you got it figured out. But we all get to sit here with years of experience as fans or media members and watch players go through the same cycle over and over again, what it's like to be a rookie, and then you figure it out. Then what it's like to be a second-year guy, or what it's like to play for Kyle Shanahan, or what it's like to get attention, or like we're experts on, oh, if you tweet that or you post that, here's what the reaction's going to be. It's going to be hard to get out of it. But for players, like they are going through it individually for the first time. Like we saw it happen 10 years ago. Well, they were 14. They didn't see it happen. So it's very easy to be an authority and to have the perspective from the outside that we have because we've seen it happen over and over and over again. But my point on Brandon is like he wasn't a guy that said a lot of stuff publicly, posted anything. But he was clearly a guy that played with an edge, always, with something to prove to somebody. And even if somebody is like some invisible somebody, part of the reason they loved him was that he, if Fred Warner hit somebody late in practice to try and spark something, it's Aiyuk that's going to come running in to start a fight. That Aiyuk blocks like he hates somebody. I got to go back. I should pull it up because when you haven't played and you haven't really just talked about football, all we get is this type of stuff. That's why I put a clip in of an Aiyuk catch yesterday from the 2023 season, the 2024 NFC playoff game against the Packers, where he has a huge catch on 3rd and 5. Like all of that stuff helps you wash the negative vibes away piece by piece, and he's not getting the chance to do that. But I did an interview with him, was it last off season, to talk about, or maybe it was, I don't remember, but to talk about blocking as a receiver. And his line was, every week I watch tape middle of the week to figure out who I hate this week. Like, who is the guy on the other team that I want? Oh, it was after the Ravens game 2 years ago. And he said, every week I just watch tape to figure out who I hate. Like, who's the guy that I got beef with and I got to go take out. So I think you had to understand that about him. And maybe you would call this giving him the benefit of the doubt. I don't, whatever. I don't care what you call it, but he is a guy that plays well with anger. Now, whatever happened last year, I don't even think that was, I don't know if that was anger in the offseason, in the regular season, maybe discomfort, playing a little out of his element, whatever it was. It didn't feel like you're getting his best. I know there's some metrics and some analysis like, oh, he was every bit the player as before. Okay, maybe. It just didn't look right. It didn't look right. And I think what the 49ers really understand is they need him. And I think their hope is if he gets on the field, he'll realize that, I don't want to say he needs them to, but like they tried to trade him to the Patriots last year. Or 2 years ago. Well, last year. Tried to trade him to the Patriots last year. Patriots going to offer him a bunch of money. They didn't want to go. Didn't want to play for the Patriots. Tried to trade him to the Browns. Didn't want to go to the Browns. Want to go to the Steelers. But they weren't going to pay him as much. So, okay, well, now the solution is let's go play for Washington. Washington doesn't need him. They got Terry McLaurin. We're going to trade you, Terry McLaurin? For what? Aiyuk and what? So we still got a long way to go in this thing because he's got to get healthy. He's got to perform. And then by that point, you think, oh, let's get him healthy. Let's trade him. By that point, he might be a good enough player to keep. He might be hard to upgrade. And, I think the thing that complicates it too for the 49ers, if you're of the 40, if you're of the contingent in the 49ers that doesn't care, it's like, we got to move on. Well, you need somebody to replace him. And they got into the situation where they couldn't trade out of the first round, so they drafted Ricky Pearsall. And like maybe that inflexibility in that draft was just going to be a blessing in disguise because they'd find their next, go-to receiver. But that has to actually happen. That hasn't happened yet. And they drafted Jacob Cowing in the fourth round. That has to happen. And it could happen. It might happen. I mean, the way Ricky Pearsall looked at the end of the year was promising. But the most likely scenario is still the guy that played like an all-pro or a Pro Bowler. That's the guy that's most likely to play like an all-pro or a Pro Bowler, not the guy who, is not produced at a high level in the NFL before. So he's still one of their best options, and they're still one of his best options. And, I think the other thing to say about it is like, I have always thought this, and there's probably not a lot of you, but those of you who are like OG back in the day radio listeners know, I've always thought that like, if you were a rich, famous athlete with a lot of attention and people overanalyzing everything you said, it would be fun to mess with people. And as I got older, I realized it might be fun until it's not fun because you can't put the genie back in the bottle because people just, it affects your teammates. It affects your team. It just affects everything. You're getting asked about it all the time as if it's real and you got to keep it up. And that's not really the way you want to roll. But there is an element of like, let's just pull on the string and see people react. And it's probably not best for Kyle Shanahan to have to answer that question in 6 months, or in 2 months, but a month and a half. But this thing might be over by then. All of this stuff gets brushed away if you show up, if you smile, you hang out with your teammates, you work hard, and you produce. And he may know that. What's best for him and what's best for the 49ers can be independently the same thing. Like if he wants to get traded to Washington specifically, the idea of like, let's get Jay Daniels what he wants, that's all well and good. But Adam Peters still has a job to do. And he can't be doing just solids for his quarterback. They didn't trade for his guy last year, and it worked out pretty well for him, Jaden Daniels. So Brandon Aiyuk performing helps him leave if that's what he wants, and it helps the 49ers. But I don't, to answer the question, is a Brandon Aiyuk trade inevitable? I'm going to answer no, and I'm really trying to be. I'm trying to not be. I can't tell, honestly, in myself if I'm being contrarian with that, because the odds are at the end of the day that he doesn't finish his career with the Niners. Because nobody, for the most part, the odds are never in favor of somebody playing their whole career with one team. But that's a different question. Like, does he get traded on this contract in the next 2 years? Is the question. And there's, I think there's probably a big part of me that feels like for everything the Niners are saying, they're just biding their time until they can do it. And they'll take 50, 70 cents, 65 cents just to move on. But if he looks like a great player, that changes things. The contract doesn't change, though. The contract doesn't change. Daniel says, how on earth can it be inevitable? Wasn't there like a super villain that said, I am inevitable? Somebody said that. Who said that? How on earth can it be inevitable? I mean, the point being, like, is this beyond the point of no return? And that's what I'm saying. I think the answer is no, but it's not like 100% no. It's not 80% no. I feel like I'm kind of out on a limb to say no, a trade is not inevitable. You see so many things just change when you get to play and get out there and have fun. This guy, football probably hasn't been fun for Brandon Aiyuk for over a year now, or at least as much fun. You know, as much fun as like going into the Super Bowl, since they lost the Super Bowl, it's just been less fun, downhill fun. It was like maybe a little up, you get game day, and then hurt and downhill fun again. Opinion from Steve-O on the chat says he was talking about YouTubers, which in this case is actually funny because it's like YouTubers. I'm not convinced he's talking about the Niners here because, again, the timeline, as I said earlier, was November 5th was the trade deadline, and he got the surgery like a week later. Thanos said, I am inevitable. P.O. says, immature or too many blows to the head, take 50 cents on the dollar and move on. No, I don't. He can still be their best receiver. He can still be their best receiver. Zay Jones enters the chat. That's a nice little callback to this time last year. What was that report? There was a talk like, would the Jags include? I don't even. I made fun of it for so long that I forgot what the actual report was. Somebody reported that like there was talk about Zay Jones for Brandon Aiyuk. It was something like that. So that's why that joke keeps coming back. Wood Gravy says, if you want to love Aiyuk, watch him block Parsons. Then Parsons punches him. Not called. Justin says, BA can't keep making these ridiculous comments, then cry victim when people talk about him. He's a talented player, but he has a real maturity issue and needs to grow up. Yeah, you could argue, like, even if he's just talking about YouTubers here. He's not talking about the Niners. But this is like, who did I see? It's an NBA player. Somebody tweeted the other day something very cryptic. And then people were like, what are you talking about? And he was like, oh, I was watching Love Island or something like that. Like, you know that people are going to take it a certain way. But again, like, this is all on paper. Show up, play hard, make catches, make blocks, high five Brock Purdy. And, A.J. Brown and Nick Sirianni got into it before, and they won a Super Bowl. So I just, everyone, you kind of roll your eyes. Lee says, why talk now? Get back on the field. Get back, prove it on the field. You already got paid. Why talk now? Boredom, I guess. I mean, like anybody else. Murray says it was Zay Jones and a third. Maybe that was the report. Somebody called somebody. Zay Jones and a third. It's like, what? And then the Niners didn't even take advantage when Zay Jones got cut and was available. There were a lot of Aiyuk like reports last year. And as you know, I like to play report detective, expose the BS. And that one was at the top of that one, could not be ignored. It was so bad. Comment, unless we get a low first or high to mid second rounder, no. Here's the thing about this too is like, I don't think you're getting that. But the thing about this too is they have tried to they have tried to trade, like, it's not fake that there were trade. They tried to trade Debo. They tried to trade. They were open. Maybe that's the better way to say it. Not try. They're open to trading. Both of them. They traded neither. But he knows. That's part of this too, where you have to, and I think Lynch gets this, is everybody sees what the player says and goes like, oh, disloyal, malcontent. But the second, and it's just the way the business works, and everybody understands it, but it doesn't change how you feel as a person. If your agent says like, yeah, they were open to trading you, they didn't say no right away. Wasn't like Bosa when they're like, over our dead body. So I get that. Like once you've crossed that bridge as a player to realize like, oh, I am dispensable. I'm not indispensable to them. I forgot about this, but here's a comment. Remember when Guy talked about part of the reason BA was so important to the Niners is he didn't do this, and we mostly agreed with a great point? I do remember that. This was before anything got dramatic last year. Maybe it was during the season. And I had clips of DK Metcalf and AJ Brown, DK getting in fights, things that AJ said. No, it was a clip of AJ kind of losing out on the sideline. Oh, I know. It was AJ Brown. Was it the opener? Was it the opener last year? 2024 was a weird football season, so I've gotten 23 and 24 a little mixed up. But it was the Eagles opener against, I don't say Chicago, but I don't think it was Chicago. But it was like a standalone national TV game. If it wasn't week 1, it was early, Monday night maybe. And the Eagles were putting the game on ice by running the ball. Maybe it was New England. They were putting the game on ice by running the football. And maybe it was like New England 2 years ago. I'm going to pull it up. But they were putting the game on ice, running the football. And AJ Brown threw a sideline tantrum because he wasn't getting the ball. And I think it was New England 2 years ago. But he threw a sideline tantrum because he wasn't getting the ball. And then Nick Sirianni started throwing him the ball. And they weren't completing passes, and the clock started to stop, and they started to punt, and the Patriots started to get back into the game. And it was like, look how catering to this player really almost cost your team a game. I think it was 2023 opener. That's my guess. But look how catering to this guy almost cost you the game. Like, that's a disaster. So that was, so I brought that up, and I don't know, something else maybe AJ Brown had done. AJ Brown went on to win the Super Bowl. And definitely DK getting penalties. And the point was, hey, part of the deal is like, this guy, he might as well be a left tackle. He's so drama-free. So much for that. That was a good memory, though. Comment from JD. Seems like BA and Brock had a great connection. He had a slow start last year, no question, but he was starting to play well before his knee exploded. I still believe he can get back there. I put it this way. I think his limitation is not that he can't get back to being that player emotionally. It's just the physical part of it. I don't know. The knee. The knee, the full knee, it's not just the ACL, the multiple knee injuries. Pickens? Somebody said, somebody had a good memory. I can't find it right now in the comment, but I knew when I said left tackle that would get somebody's attention. Didn't our left tackle hold out too? Yeah, he still could. But somebody said the trade, the reported trade was Zay Jones and number 17 for Aiyuk. 17, and I don't even remember which draft. The 24 draft had to have been, right? Who was the 17th pick in the 24 NFL draft? I mean, that was a Dallas Turner. Oh, so Jacksonville traded the pick to Minnesota, where their Brian Thomas would have been available there. Obviously, Pearsall. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, Pearsall. That's where all the receivers went. Yeah, whatever. Chop Robinson. Yeah, whatever. All right. So, as I said, to answer the question in the headline, I don't think a trade is inevitable. You got to get on the field. I hope he's healthy. He's a special player. I think people forget because he's not, Justin Jefferson. Go back and just watch, you don't need to do film study. Just go watch an 8-minute clip of some of their biggest games. And I know, the Super Bowl was not great, but the dude made a lot of big plays for this team. A lot of big plays. The bar is high for the guy that's supposed to replace him. All right. Okay, that's the first live in a long time. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Appreciate y'all. And we'll talk soon. Later.